Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Small Time Songwriter. My name's Angel Corsi and I'm of course your small time songwriter. Today I'm going to be introducing my good friend and longtime friend Laura Marie, who's a San Antonio singer-songwriter, folk singer. And what I love about this lady is that she is just not afraid to speak her mind ever, and I love people like that. I love unfiltered people. I also love the journey it takes to become an unfiltered person. I'm somebody that has to work pretty hard to keep my certain thoughts down and quelled, and I tend to be I try to be a very open and sort of direct person, but it's a skill. It's something that you practice, and it's also something that you often have to go through hard times to figure out how to speak up for yourself. So I'm really excited to see if she's willing to speak up about that and talk about her journey as a folk singer, as a songwriter, also just dealing with the industry and all of its the little things that maybe cut like paper cuts, and it's just going to be a really fun conversation. I'm looking really forward to it. So let's jump into the interview. Sorry. There.
Got it.
Okay.
And I should know that too, because I'm on podcasts. I have Zoom calls all the time.
Yeah, okay, so for those of you just tuning in, I forgot to press record, of course, because I'm an idiot. And you were just about to tell me your story. So tell me your story, Laura. Tell me about how you got started on that. You're telling me you're a poet, but when you started?
Well, I started out writing poetry like in elementary school, and then in middle school and high school, I did that. And then I decided to go and study marine biology and my in college. And when I did that, when I went away to college, I had a nervous breakdown. I'm a childhood trauma survivor. So
Wow.
a lot had happened to me at a young age that I hadn't really dealt with, that I kind of buried. And going away to college was kind of like the big trigger that made a lot of that stuff come up.
Wow.
And I dropped out of school because I couldn't handle things. I couldn't handle relationships, life, anything. So it was in that process of trying to just stay sane that I started writing lyrics. I started writing, and I used to I was fascinated with music. I loved music. I would listen, being very young and listening to my dad's records and my aunt's records and different, I would study them all the time. So I loved lyrics. That was just another form of poetry to me. I was fascinated with all of it. But it wasn't until then where I started writing lyrics to just sort of process some of the things I'd been through.
Right.
And some of the ways I felt, just the really intense feelings I had, that I even started entertaining the fact that I wanted to maybe be in music. I mean, because I was in church choir and I was always like terrified to stand up in front of people and sing. Absolutely, it was like the worst torture, like knees shaking, knees literally knocking together
Wow.
kind of thing. That actually happened. I'm like, oh, that happens. It's not just in the cartoons, it really does happen. So, and then, after being out of school for a while, I decided to go back and study music because I really thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to learn how to do it correctly. And I want to know all the rules and the language of music so I can, do it professionally.
Yeah.
So I did that. That's what I did. I got it. And I got my degree in music education thinking that, oh, well, it's going to be really hard to make it as a musician, so I could fall back on teaching,
Right.
which is the most ridiculous statement ever. I have friends that are teachers. My sister was a brilliant teacher. I am not a brilliant teacher.
Yeah.
And I got into it and I was a choir director and I didn't last more than a year and a half. It was just, that was not for me.
It's just different. Yeah.
It's a different, your heart has to be in it. My heart was not in it. So my heart was in writing. And so I left and I worked for an insurance agency as I, fronted a band and wrote a lot of music. So that's kind of where I got started, how I got started into everything.
So let me ask you about, is it okay if we touch a little bit on the inspiration of your music with the
Sure.
trauma stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
So I've just recently started to experience writing from that lens and trying to do that. I think for me, music has always been more of the escape of that, and I've sort of like spent a lot of time running away from that part of my brain. And lately, I've realized that my best art is coming from those places that I really don't want to visit. So I wonder how you feel about that. Do you feel like it's necessary? It's like something that you just have to go into, whether you want to or not, whether it feels like really terrible or not, because I have a thing where like I'll write a song like my last record that I released this year was called Fabula, and there were some songs in
Yeah.
there that I couldn't like. I had for 3 months before trying to record them because every time I'd play them, I'd start freaking out or something. And when I
Yeah.
was recording them, I was having panic attacks in the night the whole time, and I
With
just
a lot of processing going
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I wonder that about other people that say things like they have to write about their trauma or their things that they're
Yeah.
thinking about.
I don't think anybody has to do it. I don't think it's whether or not it's net. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I
It's all
meant to
right.
hit stop instead of snooze.
Yeah,
Whether or not it's necessary, I don't know necessarily think it's necessary for anybody to process their trauma in that way. So many people have different ways of processing, but it can be a very useful tool. And I also think that it can lend itself well, because we as artists, that's part of, I'm not gonna say it's necessarily our job because we have a lot of different jobs and we have a lot of different purposes, but it can be a purpose. It can,
hmm,
for me, it was something where I felt, I think I wrote, and I mentioned this in one of my songs, how I wrote in code. I didn't really blatantly say what I was going through or what I was
yeah,
dealing with. But I was sort of working things out through in the context of songs and relationships in the songs and that sort of
sure,
thing.
yeah,
And that was one way for me to get through it, thinking, well, this is how I'm a musician, right? And this is going to, I'm going to put this out there and people are going to love it. And the music industry is hard, so you don't really get that
yeah,
that feedback
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
But what I found over the years is my entire purpose for writing was not about other people ever. It never was.
Mm,
Because when people say, well, you need to write for this audience or that audience, I can't do it, or I couldn't do it,
sure.
because the thing that drove me all the time was working out the emotion. So when I really look back on my entire career, my entire time in the music industry, it's really just about me resolving things I needed to say out loud, things I needed to process. So for me, that's what it was. And so
Yeah,
that helped me. My main purpose was to get through that, to learn something from that experience, and then to maybe communicate that in a way that might show that to other people who've gone through similar things.
yeah.
And I
It's
think,
almost accidental. It's almost
yeah, it was kind
accidental.
of accident. So, and then there's a value in that, there's also a value in being the kind of person who can write songs that everybody can identify with,
Yeah,
or
of
or
course.
write songs that everybody can use to escape from it, because we need
Hmm.
that too.
The
So
box.
yeah, there's so many
Yeah,
different ways, uses, and for self-expression in that way,
yeah,
but
and
for
that's
me, it definitely was a thing of like, I have been processing my entire life, and it's just been layer after layer after layer after layer. um yeah, and when I finally accepted that, I felt like the pressure come off. Like, it's just, there's no pressure for me to reach some certain level right now,
hmm,
because I realized it was never about that for me.
yeah.
And the more I made it about that, the worse I felt about everything I was doing all the time,
I
you
think a
know
lot of us can relate to that because I think a lot of us do feel this external pressure to achieve a certain something. And
mm,
I don't, like you said, it's not for everybody to say, you have to do this or you have to do that. But I do think, just as a general rule of thumb, doing what calls you and drives you is probably going to be the best thing for your spirit in general.
yeah.
And I think when you approach your art and your music that way, I mean, I'm literally just like learning this now. I'm 37 now, so it's taken a long time, and I've been doing the music thing forever. So I just recently have gotten to the spot where I realize like the pressure of wanting to achieve a certain thing or become a certain level or make it financially stable or any of those kinds of external things, they don't ever let you sleep. But the things that like let you sleep is when you just do what you are driven to do and your art is telling you to write.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Like that last record I had, Fabula, was sort of like my version of confessing those kinds of things. And then this new record I'm working on, Wild Blood, is a lot more about how I feel as an adult looking back and feeling what I'm seeing now and how I want to walk through the world. And one thing I really love about you is that you walk through the world. Like, you are constantly like standing up for yourself. You're like speaking up for others. You're not afraid to just like share your mind and your
Oh, I am afraid.
Okay, well there you go.
I am afraid. Yeah, I
Well, well
totally.
then you must
Yeah.
be good at poker. But
Uh,
but but you're very brave in the sense of like you just speak what you want to speak on. So I call you one of my spicy friends for that
yeah.
reason. That's not because you're Latina, but
That's
because
not.
I got spicy people. Although Latinas are spicy, but I got like spicy as in like you're one of those people that's just like not afraid to argue with somebody, not afraid to like just say your point, and
Oh,
not afraid.
like,
Yeah,
like sometimes I'll get a knot right here that just, I don't like, oh, I don't want to do it. I don't
yeah,
want to argue.
yeah,
I don't want the discomfort and the conflict. And then it's just like, something compels me, like, this is just not right. This is not right. Something needs to be, or somebody needs to say
yeah,
something and
yeah.
present an opposing point of view
Hmm.
for this, because it's just so misguided, or it's so ignorant, or it's so mean.
Yeah,
Or it's so unjust. Like, I have that justice gene, right? I have that thing,
yeah,
just like, I just get very, very, it gets under my skin, and I just become compelled to have to say something out loud. It's
yeah.
not enough to just think it. I have to say it.
I like
Yeah,
that justice gene. I've never heard
yeah,
that, but I
justice
think
gene.
I might have a little bit of that in me.
An
Um,
overblown sense of, you know, justice.
well, I just think that it's important to speak up in a world where like we spend a lot of time filtering ourselves a lot. You know, social media is such a strange place because you literally can't get anything right, no matter what you
No,
say. You could
nuh-uh.
say something as benign as like, I try to eat vegan once a week, and then someone says,
How dare
"How
you?
dare you
How
kill so
dare
many
you?
cows?" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like this constant thing, but maybe you're afraid, maybe you get the knot, but you still do it. And I think that's like
Yes.
courageous, right? It's probably courage, or is what,
Well,
because you talk about really big topics. Like I read your posts all the
mm,
time. They're about narcissists and dealing with narcissism and sexism in the industry, which I want to talk about with you, obviously.
ooh,
And
yes.
yeah, in politics, you talk about the hypocrisy of politics and things like that. Like it's just stuff that really resonates with me on a lot of levels because I run into this conflict a lot. So
Well,
one,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, no,
Sorry.
yeah, I guess I was getting to my question. Sorry, I was taking the walkabout route,
That's okay.
but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, when you speak up, when you say those things, like what drives you to speak about these particular topics, because they seem to be something that you just know a lot about and feel a lot
Mm.
in yourself.
I don't always know a lot about. I don't always know a lot about what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
But I'm willing to listen, and I think there's something in me, like, I have parents that speak up for
yeah,
things. My dad was very, like, the protective, he's got that
yeah,
gene that comes with,
yeah,
like, he's going to speak up when he's put in a corner, when he's put,
sure,
learn that very young. My mother too, she's very justice oriented and would speak up for people who couldn't speak up for themselves. And
great,
we grew up in an environment where she's got her master's in social work, and she in pastoral theology. So
wow,
we grew up in an environment where we felt how important it was to help others and speak up for those who couldn't, or defend things that were, people from injustice and that sort of thing. So that was
mhm,
always sort of the thing that ran through our household, um, along with all kind of other things. But
yeah,
I think that's part of it. I think that I have just a difficult time. As a trauma survivor, especially one that, so my traumas were kind of hidden, and I think there's something about that when you've been through something and had to go through it alone,
hmm,
because my parents didn't know what had happened to me at a young
yeah,
age. And I didn't know enough to really tell them what
yeah,
was happening,
sure,
that you grow up feeling alone in that, and you don't want to see anybody else go through that same pain. So it's a tremendous amount of empathy you have for other people. And
yeah,
it has really made me, when I see something, I just feel like there's no way I'm going to let that person not have somebody, on their side,
yeah.
or to say something when I feel they're being abused in some way.
I love that. It's making me a little emotional because I definitely feel that same pull with that kind of stuff because of how
Yeah.
singular, how alone I've felt. I've always like looked at others that are in similar paths or situations or need like a similar amount of forgiveness or something, and I look at them and there's this need of like not this one.
Yeah.
We already did some of that, and not this person. This person's not going to be by themselves on this. I'm going to
Right.
try to speak up for this,
But there's definitely a balance to reach. And with my project, I wrote a book that is still, we're still in the editing stages. It's supposed to
Cool.
be out soon, but and in that book I do talk about the origins of that sort of thing for me. Since I was very, very young, I had that sense of um needing to step in and to help and that sort of thing. But there's a dark side of that too, right? So there's the side where you put everybody else's needs ahead of your own, or
Yeah.
the side where you identify as, if I'm not rescuing or helping or saving somebody, then who am I? I'm not, I don't
Yeah.
exist really.
This is the
So you're,
activist problem, kind of,
yeah. So you kind of put yourself into it full force, and then you don't really know where your boundaries are as far
Yep.
as like where you end and somebody else begins.
Yeah.
And that could get very confusing for them. And you're not really helping other people. You're either enabling behavior, or you're not allowing them to get to a point where they have personal growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
there's a
totally know
way.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a way that you can be of assistance to other people. Most of it's through being an example. So that's, one
Yeah.
thing, being an example, but also encouraging people without encouraging dependency, which is
Hmm.
the part where I got really caught up in a lot, with that dependency and codependency and
Yeah.
unhealthy relationships.
Yeah. I totally relate to that too, man. Cause, I just like, I've recently, in the last, I don't know, 6 years, I've spent more time understanding the boundary of how much help you need to include in your project. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think, well, I mean, that's kind of a Freudian slip there, but that's kind of what it is. It's when you're in that mode, it's almost like everything is a project. Everyone is a project. You're just trying to like
Yeah.
work out, and it's sort of, you're sort of helping them, but really you're just trying to avoid your guilt about something, or you're
Yeah,
trying to
it's a lot
avoid.
of projection. It's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
projection. It's a lot of avoiding your own issues. I'll see a lot of people, I've done it before too, where you can see it. It's because you can see it better when it's outside of yourself. So when you see somebody else doing
yeah,
it, all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I can fix that. But what you really need is fix
yeah,
this.
yeah.
And there's a whole thing, like, it's really easy to remember the minute you point your finger this way, the rest of these are pointing right back at you. So every time
That's
it's just like,
exactly.
oh shit, I
Yeah,
did it again,
that is a beautiful segue to my next question, because one of the things that I'm writing about in my new record is about like the sort of Chicano Latino kind of experience of being around a bunch of people that are making you their project, or they're sort of tokenizing you a little bit, or they're making you a little bit of an example of how they would prefer their brown
Yeah.
people to be. And
Yeah.
and I think that it's not a thing to like really go after anybody, because the process of this record has been me analyzing my own hypocrisy about stuff, and figuring out that finger that's pointing back at me, that when I'm trying to be annoyed at someone acting a certain way, I'm still like living this like very comfy middle class life now, and it's just like a beautiful life. Everything's cool. I got the guitars on the wall, like everything's
Yeah.
like the house doesn't leak, like everything's good. And I don't want to forget feeling uncomfortable, and it's really just about that. So I
Yeah.
guess the it's my segue of asking you, like, you're, if you don't mind, you're do you prefer Latina or Latinx, or what do you prefer?
I don't know what I prefer.
Okay,
I'm,
good. Okay, good. Because I
Hispanic, Latinx,
Hispanic, yeah.
Tejana or whatever,
Tejana, yeah,
I
Tejana.
mean,
Okay.
it's all,
Well, I'm just
the
gonna call
border
you.
crossed us, dude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, since I'm brown, I'm just gonna call you Brown. So we're brown
Yeah,
people,
we're
and
brown people.
yeah, and
Mhm.
the other thing that I've run into that I've been writing about is just being a brown person in the folk scene. The folk scene is interesting because the
Yeah,
folk
it
scene is
is.
very like white male dominated folk scene.
Yes.
It's not that it's got like direct racism or anything like that. It's not anything that scary. But I want to ask you what your experience is as a Latina, as a Tejana in the folk scene through all these years, and how you see it shifting, and if there is a shift, and do you think it's good? So we're talking about
Right.
your Chicano, Tejana kind of
Chicana.
thing. Chicana.
Yeah.
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 Sorry, I forgot Chicano, Tejana. I forgot. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about your brown person experience in a scene that's like not really brown people-y. You know what I mean? I mean, just to be
Yeah.
honest, it's not. You don't see a lot of we're joking around about names and stuff. We don't see a lot of Rodriguez on the folk fests and the, and the you know.
No. I think it's been the same experience as it's just been in the world, really. Like, I mean, I grew up in San Antonio. It's we're the majority, and brown
Yeah.
people are majority in San
Hmm.
Antonio. Pretty well, I don't know that they technically are, but yeah, pretty much. It's a very large population.
Yeah,
And I grew
sure.
up in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood.
Mm.
So it, I think what I see is there are assumptions being made. In the folk, I mean, sometimes, not, this isn't all the time. There's a lot of acceptance, and it's
Yeah.
lovely and everything. But there's some,
There's a ton of
you know,
acceptance. Yeah.
sometimes people look at you like you're some, and I haven't had a lot of this, but like a little bit like, oh, an exotic bird, kind of thing. Um, because
Yes. That's ooh, an exotic bird. I love.
I see it more with Black people actually. Like they're
Yeah.
more like,
Yep.
they like, oh, so, oh, it's, but
Yeah.
like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this. Kind of like, welcome, come in, we want to hear you. But
Yeah.
there's also some assumptions of like, well, why don't you sing in Spanish, or why don't you do
Hmm.
this? I mean, like, I didn't grow up speaking Spanish, and if
Yeah.
you want to know the reasons why, it was because of the discrimination. And my parents, my dad had his hands beaten for speaking Spanish in
Yep.
school, and or he relentlessly made fun of, or whatever. And I am proud of my heritage,
Hmm.
absolutely, but I was raised in an American tradition. I took my husband's name, which is not Hispanic. I didn't even think of those things, because I just feel like I just stand for myself. Of
Yeah.
course, now with more context and understanding and being out in the world, and my husband's of German descent. He's not German, he's American,
Yeah.
and he is several generations removed. So, but going to the Midwest to visit his family, then all of a sudden, that's when I start noticing, like, oh,
The differences
they
in
look at
culture and
us
looking. Yeah.
differently.
Yeah.
There's people that do that. And I had some of that growing up too. I mean, when I went to go visit my aunt and uncle in Ohio, I had people calling me a beaner and a spick.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
even had that in Austin, Texas. So
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
was going to college there, I faced a lot of discrimination there from some of the frat guys that just passing by, just yelling slurs at us and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you get that everywhere. The folk scene, nobody, I mean, everybody seems rather accepting. And I don't know whether it's because I'm a woman, or because I am Latina
That's
or
what I want to talk
Hispana
about
or
too,
what.
because I feel like it's like a combination that you're
Yeah, sometimes it's like,
unavoiding
yeah.
these landmines that you have to walk through. It's kind of
Well,
scary.
it's because I think sometimes there will be people in the music industry, and not just white people in the music industry, but Hispanic people in the music
Sure.
industry, men in general,
Yeah.
who feel like they've got to either rescue you or fix you or shape you or
Hmm.
create you,
Hmm.
or and because you're a woman, and maybe because doubly because you're also Hispanic, oh, let me show you the error of your ways. It's like it plays into some little fantasy of I mean, I don't know, that it's just
Yeah.
a thing. It's like, here you are, this helpless person who's trying to assimilate, and
Yeah.
and now let me help you. And I've seen some of that, not just with me, but with other women.
Yeah.
um it happens. Most of the men, most, like the majority of the men that I've met in the folk scene, like purely folk, have been extraordinarily helpful and
Oh
respectful.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Some of them very self-conscious, because they're not sure what they're going to say that's going to be negative.
That is actually what happens to me the most is like I love the people that come to my shows and all that stuff, and I love the people that I meet in the scenes, but there is that sort of like the overcorrection that gets the trip up because they're trying so hard to, you know what I mean? And
Right.
it's an interesting thing. I guess here, because look, right now is an example of why I think you're awesome, because you're someone that very much listens, but also you're someone that is very honest with how they see things and how they experience things. And I really
I
appreciate that,
try.
because right now we're kind of on like a socio-political bandwagon that all of us can kind of jump on. And if
Mm.
you're, especially if you're like a person like us, if you're people of color, it's very easy to just be like, yeah, it's just really racist and weird and all that stuff. But you have enough I guess I don't know what the word is. You just have enough of whatever your good faith spirit is. It's just like you have enough to say. I grew up in a mostly brown town, and a lot of the I do see it, but it's not like to the degree that it's more affecting me more from a point of view as a woman in the
Yeah.
industry. So let's pivot and let's talk more about that, because one thing you like to, because you like to talk about that on social media, or at least, well, at
Yeah.
least you don't like to talk about it, but you talk about it, and
Yeah.
you talk about dealing with narcissists and people trying to shape, like, especially women
Yeah.
in the music industry. So I want to hear your thoughts about that, and I think the listeners should too.
Where do I start? There's so much.
Let's talk with some
Um,
personal experiences and jump in there.
okay.
Yeah,
I will say that, coming up in the music industry, I do want to say something about the last subject though, is
sure.
that when I'm talking about some of these things that have happened, it's been this very small percentage of negative experience with people in the
Yeah,
folk scene,
right.
specifically with
It's
regards to people of color. And
yeah.
even some of that is not negative. Some of it is just like, why is
Yeah,
it just so intense? But
yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
And just to continue on that, because we both want careers after this. Which is, I was talking to my buddy Jackson, which you know, Jackson Emmer,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, and I was talking to him on a podcast, and we talked about how the folk scene itself is taking a lot of like positive strides in that direction, in terms of
Yeah.
like they're
Love it.
make being coming,
LGBTQ
yeah,
and
they're
the whole
becoming
thing.
more
Yes, it's
inclusive,
yes,
and they're
for
even
sure.
creating panels of people of color and stuff like that,
It's
which just
awesome.
wasn't a thing back in the MySpace days when we were in MySpace and we're learning about Folk Alliance and all that stuff.
Right, right.
You go in there and it's just a bunch of banjos and mandolins, and you're the only brown person there, and everyone treats you weird. But nowadays it's like there's literal panels and all that stuff. So I think just as a culture of like singer songwriters, I think it's becoming more expansive and inclusive. So definitely
Yeah,
want to make sure we give credit for that.
for sure, for
But
sure.
let's talk
Yeah.
about your personal experience with
Yeah.
the women's stuff, because I don't know what that's
Yeah.
like, obviously, right? But but I want to hear all about it.
It's hard to disconnect it from, I think that there's a certain element of me having been a survivor of a sexual assault from a
Mm,
very young age, that that in some ways that sort of makes you a magnet, and it's a weird thing to say, but
mm,
it's almost like, because you've been through something or existed with a certain type of abuse in your life, somehow that can make you have blind spots, and to certain behaviors that you don't notice, because it almost becomes normalized, like, so I think in a lot of ways, because I'll talk to women. There's a lot of women. The majority of women in music have had experiences that are not great as far as
yeah,
sexism goes, and as
yeah.
far as that goes. But there are some women who don't have that experience at all,
Mm,
and so I think that it speaks to a pattern, for a lot of people. But the thing that I found entering the music industry and not having a lot of not a solid identity for myself as an artist, not having a great amount of self-esteem, for myself. Like, I could stand up for other people, but you say like I stand up for myself. That took a long time for me to stand up for myself. It was
yeah.
much easier for me to stand up for somebody else than it was to stand up for myself.
Which is so
So,
interesting, because I just see you as like a badass, like you're kicking pads and stuff like that.
dude, that took so long. That
Yeah,
that that I felt compelled. I got to the point where I was just like, I remember telling my husband and my sisters, like, I just need to hit things. I just
yeah,
need to hit things. I mean,
yeah,
and my sister's like, take this kickboxing class with me. I'm like, but you don't really hit things. You're just swinging in the air. I need to actually. So I went and joined the UFC gym because I
yeah,
needed to hit things. And then I just found that was a good way for me to process. But and it helped build my confidence too, to be able to speak up. I don't think I can kick anybody's ass. That's not the whole point of it for
yeah,
me. The point is I have options and I don't have to stand there
yeah.
and take it. Um,
Exactly. That's really
so
what any self defense is all about. It's like
right. Yeah,
it's not
having
about
those
like you.
options
Yeah. But anyway,
and feel, yeah,
you were
that
saying,
self-reliance. So where was I?
you were just talking about how
I forgot.
how you were just talking about how you seem to be kind of a magnet for
Right.
especially
So
women.
yeah, so there was this element. Like, so I go into the music industry very, very terrified and unsure and uncertain of myself as a musician, as an artist, as a writer, as a person. And I was surrounded, just because it's a male dominated industry,
Hmm.
by men.
Yeah.
And some of those men were incredibly supportive, and those that are still in my life. And
Right.
then there were others that were supportive, but with the caveat that I sort of followed their direction. And so I got a lot of advice that that was pretty much directing me to go in a direction that was re-traumatizing for me, that I didn't even recognize at the time. I never wanted any of my music to be about my body. And I don't mean that I didn't want to sing about my body. I mean that I didn't want, like, I came into this world with ideas, into any world. I mean, just being born into the earth, with ideas. And the minute we're out of the womb as women and we present ideas, the society around us, at least my generation, was like, okay, that's nice, but where's your dress? Why aren't you wearing pink? Or don't you like this pretty thing? I remember getting spanked in preschool because I wouldn't go into the toy kitchen. I wanted to go in the closet with the boys, with playing with the blocks. I didn't care about the boys. I liked the blocks. I wanted to play with the blocks.
Right.
And I got spanked because of that, because I wouldn't go in the kitchen with the little girl that ate her scabs. Gross. So, you have these experiences and this constant sense that you don't belong. And here I was, with a band, and the band was great. But when the band broke up and I was on my own, I'm in the studio with other musicians, I feel very, very insecure. I've been conditioned to think that the only worth I have is on whether or not somebody's attracted to me.
Right.
And a lot of that means they find me physically attractive. And I'm trying to just sit and look pretty, just sit and I'm so nervous because I want to learn how to do things. And the person who's running the session turns to me and goes, oh, do we want attention? Is that what we want? Like, real condescending. And I felt incredibly shamed by that.
Sounds gross.
And yeah, it is gross because it goes on from there. But I had to sit there very recently because it was like a memory that came back in like a therapy session. And I was like, I had to unpack that shame. And the shame was because at first I wanted to say, I didn't want attention. That's not what the kind of attention I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted to be paid attention to because I wanted to be recognized for what I was contributing. And I wanted to learn.
Because you're the artist there, yeah.
But that's only half true because I had not deprogrammed at that point. So I was still stuck in the idea that I had to sit and look pretty. So I did want that kind of attention because that's the only kind of attention I thought I was able to get or deserving to get at that point. And that just made me really sad because it's like, here we are conditioned to think that that's what we have to be. And then when we do play into that role, he's shaming me for it.
Yeah, you're not taken seriously.
Right. And not taken seriously. And then, you just get you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't you're caught in the loop yourself. And it's just a trap because you're never getting the kind of development or input, or you don't even know if people are there because they really do think you're talented or because they want something from you. And that's really sad to me. Like, I shed a lot of tears over that because it really fucks with your self-worth completely.
Yeah, I hear this so much from my like my women songwriter friends. They all say that same thing, that I don't know if this meeting is a meeting or if they're trying to be like a fake date or they're trying to make a date happen or something. And it's
plus the constant messages about, oh, you need to look, and this is like literally the what they'll say, you need to look fuckable. Don't talk about your relationship. Don't, it was like, it's gross to me because it's like, why does it have to be about that? I have ideas that have nothing to do with whether or not I'm a sexual human being. And plus I am a sexual human being, and I'd like to be able to discuss that without making it my entire identity because I'm more than just that. So it's a very frustrating position to be in the music industry or to any entertainment industry and be a woman. I think that's what the Barbie movie was about. It's very satisfying to hear America Ferrera's speech in that movie. If you have seen it, I don't know if you've seen it or not. But it's kind of like, I remember that was a moment because I thought the movie, I liked the movie, okay, but I wasn't, but when it got to that point, I couldn't stop crying because I was just like, that's exactly what it feels like to be a woman in the music industry. It's like, what can you do to just be who you are without having to feel like you have to try to be everything else to everybody else.
That's really just that's really just kind of a reflection of how we it's weird. The how we I don't know how to say this perfectly, but how we sort of as a society like treat women in general. That sort of like, you need to fill this role. You need to
Yeah,
make me feel better about myself, but also you need to do this, and you need
yeah,
to always make sure that I'm not feeling terrible about my own self. Like, you can't reject me, because if you reject me, then I'm a piece of shit and it's your fault. You know what I
you
mean? Like
know,
that kind of thing.
like I mean, I think that I accept my role as a mom and a woman and a wife and just a female on this earth that was born with a lot of internal sense of nurturing. Like, I have an internal sense of nurturing other people. What sucks to me is there's so much of the world that does not reciprocate that,
Right.
and I think that we owe that there. I think there's a lot of really messed up trends in the world. I have my own conspiracy theories about it. Like, there was a whole generation of parents that were raised to believe that they should let their children cry it out, that
Right.
they should not be comforted and nurtured even nursed. I mean, not everybody can nurse, and I understand that, but
Yeah.
it's just that we're primates, we're you look at every other primate, they nurture their young,
Yeah.
and so I think there's just some really shitty ideas out there that kind of work backwards for a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of abuse out there and people that don't know how to get through their traumas, and they haven't been given what they need emotionally. And
I
so
mean,
it's
that's
really difficult
Yeah, I mean, that's
for a
kind
lot
of
of
the main
people.
thing is, every like woman songwriter friend that I talk to, or artist friend, they always tell me the same thing. They're like, everybody just wants you to be their mother. Like, they just
Yeah,
like, you just
seriously.
like, instead of, they're saying things like, you need to smile, or you need to be prettier, or you need to look prettier on social media, but also, you're basically, it's basically like a bunch of dudes who just need therapy, but instead they're
Well,
going to,
and I have this one, and God bless this guy. I think he's just a really sweet guy. But I had hired him to be one of my musicians for a big festival that I was playing,
right.
and he had an emergency come up,
Hmm.
and so he just didn't show up to the festival,
Mm.
and I had to make do, and it was an important part he was playing.
Yeah.
And afterwards, when he eventually did show up after the show was done, and he talked, and he said, I'm really sorry. If it had been anybody else but you, I would have showed up, but I knew you'd understand. And then you're just kind of like,
Jeez.
that half of me is just like, I'm proud that I'm a person that is known as being loving and nurturing, forgiving and understanding. That's great.
Yeah.
But the other half of me is like, but that doesn't mean I don't need to be taken seriously as an
Yep.
artist. Like,
Yep.
it really hurt my feelings.
Yeah, because it's like, it's someone looking at you and going, "You're my mom first, and then
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you're everything else that we signed up for. But right now,
Or yeah.
you're my
Or
mom."
everybody else is a jerk, so I have to really perform for them. But for you, I can get by.
Yeah,
It's not.
exactly. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's that kind of it cuts in a lot of ways to be a woman in the industry, and to
Yeah.
try to be, because I don't not want to be nurturing. Though I will say that has gotten me in a lot of trouble before,
Sure.
because my instinct is to want to take care of other people.
Yeah, how do you deal with
And
the fans? Because that's another
oh
conversation I
yeah.
have a lot. The fans, that a person who invests in you, that buys the CD, buys the merch,
Yeah.
buys the Patreon, but then they're like at every show, and then they start kind of, because that doesn't happen with I don't. I mean, I'm sure it does happen, but I'm certain it's like a 0.8% of it happens to us fellas. But like, me as a guy, as a man, like, I don't ever run into a situation where someone feels like I owe them because they bought my record, or
Mm,
they went to my show. And what I hear a lot is like, you get these fans that are investing in you, but
yeah.
they're also expecting a lot for the investment. They're not expecting just like, oh, the exchange is I give you support from like financially, and support as a fan, but you don't just give me art. You have to give me your time. You have to give me your
Attention.
attention.
Yeah. It's a weird thing for me, because I sometimes the line shifts for different people in different situations, because I think I've connected since the MySpace days. I've connected with some people online that I've become friends with
Hmm.
online. Some of
Yeah.
them women, some of them men,
Yeah.
and because I think that they've been able to stand that test of time because they've been respectful of my boundaries.
Yes.
And I've had to draw boundaries with a number of people, and sometimes that doesn't work out well. Like, sometimes like just 6 months ago, I had to tell somebody, look, he'd sent money and I sent the money back.
Mm.
And
Wow.
I
Okay.
said, this is not, I can't take this. I can't accept this because I feel like you have already uh, exhibited that you have different ideas that I've already told you
Oh, I
it's
see.
not respectful. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, I know, I understand you're married, but I have this note I wrote for you, this poem, and it was like about
Uh,
how I dream about you and we're alone on this thing. And I'm like, look,
ooh,
that's not okay. I've already
that's
told you it's not okay. um you know, I appreciate your creativity. I wish you the best,
yeah,
but
you're saying all the nice things so that nobody
yeah,
tries to turn you
you're
into a
giving
lamp.
me money and I can't in good conscience take it from you when it's clear to me that you think that I'm just going to pretend like this is not what you're saying blatantly. It's not.
Yeah.
It's because people, I've, you know, people will,
And not everybody can do that, Laura. Like not
eh,
everyone feels
they have to
comfortable with
learn.
saying, yeah.
They
Because
have to, that's my
it's
whole thing. Like
because I've
boundaries
heard,
are, yeah,
yeah, I've heard it a
yeah,
lot. Like the boundaries can be really difficult. Like a lot of my friends, they'll tell me things like similar stories and they just don't know what to do. I mean,
yeah,
it's sort of like goes back to that whole uh umbrella of sexism that's happening in our industry because my instinct is like tell them to fuck off, but like you
yeah.
but I don't feel like I'm in danger of like becoming a lamp if someone if I tell someone to
Right.
fuck off, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like
that's the thing, that I didn't start out having good boundaries. I had zero boundaries. I had
yeah.
horrible boundaries um, for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until it nearly destroyed me that I had to start saying, like, I think, and really, when I really started setting boundaries was in 2012.
Mm.
And the song that I wrote, Honest, there was my first, like, major, oh my gosh, I'm setting a boundary here. This is huge. And this is, for me, it was huge. And it was the song, the boundary I set with that song was, if I can't have you in, wait, hold on, let me think about it. If I can't be honest with myself and with other people, with you in my life, then you don't need to be in my life.
Mm.
It's honesty had to be it. I had to be honest
Yep.
because otherwise I can't, I'm not the kind of person who can, like, maybe I can lie on the spot, but I'm not the kind of person who could live with that lie. It'll make
Yeah.
me sick to my stomach.
Yep.
I can't do that. I can't live a lie. I
Yeah.
have to be honest about where I am. I can't be constantly thinking like, how am I going to set my story? You know, how am I going to tell people this and that? I can't be something I'm not. So a lot of the advice I'd gotten to how to present myself as an artist was, you know, me constantly trying to feel like I'm supposed to be perfect and I'm supposed to be nice
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to say fuck and shit and hell, and I'm like, you know, and I'm not supposed
Yeah.
to get angry. I'm certainly not supposed to get angry because nobody
Right.
wants to see me get angry, and nobody wants
Right.
to see me talk about sexism because that's not sexy, you
Yeah.
know. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the advice I got,
Right.
and I'm like,
Right.
the
Wow.
rage inside of me was just like,
Yeah.
no, you don't understand. I've got anger.
Yeah.
I've got so much rage, and it's too bad. People have to just hear it
Yeah.
because this,
Love that.
because
It's too
swallowing
bad
it,
people just have
yeah,
to hear it. Yeah.
swallowing it was making me sick. So, you know, I think I had to learn. So from 2012 on, it's been kind of this journey of me learning to set firmer and firmer boundaries with people. And it's amazing. The minute you do it,
Yeah.
somebody will step a toe over. And then
Yeah.
you go, okay, you know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like I laugh because the minute I got this tattoo that says be love, the
Uh-huh.
minute I got that, immediately I was challenged with like, and I was just like, I hate everybody. You know, like, I'm going to be love.
Yeah.
Screw all you people. I
Yeah.
hate you, you know.
That's so funny.
It's, yeah.
But yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I think for the people that listen to the podcast, it's not a lot of people, but it's people, and I like doing this
Hello, people.
podcast. Yeah, and one of the things that I think everyone can resonate that listens is that being an artist is gonna be a lot of Wonder Bread and tuna fish sandwiches, but it's you're gonna sleep better. You're gonna sleep better if you just do the art and you're just honest and truthful with your art, and you're
Yeah.
just gonna sleep better. And I think I've done a lot of different projects. I've had a lot of different things. I've opened a lot of businesses, and every time I can't sleep, it's because I'm going directly in contrast to what the truth is about how I feel.
Yeah.
And I've felt it in a lot of different ways. I felt it in my music career, if you can even call it that, with big quotation marks. But I felt it in my music career, like going on tour and all that, and just like swallowing the weird things about like oh, you should sing a song in Spanish, or you should do this, or
Right.
having the weird house concert where everybody wants to know if I'm Angel or Angel, but then they tip really
Angel.
well. Yeah, and then
Angel. I love it.
Yeah, they tip really well, and you're not sure if it was your songs or if it was your skin
Yeah.
color. And I've had all these things, and every time, and even with my businesses, you run into these conflicts, especially nowadays because we're so divided as a country, where it's like, do I need to put safe space sticker on my business? Do I need to put the
Mm,
LGBTQ thing? Like, it's not that I don't want to put it. It's just that I wish it just lived off of the assumption, and I don't have to like put a flag outside. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And then you think, oh, I'm going to put the flag outside, and then what's going to happen to my customers? And
Right.
but I know that every time I've been in conflict with those kinds of things, my sleep sucks, and I feel
Yeah.
terrible, and I feel sick, and I feel wrong, and I think, just eat the tuna
Like, how
sandwich,
do
man.
you
Yeah.
balance your in like how you feel with how successful you want to be in music?
Yeah, that's what my
And
question is to you. Is how are you
okay.
doing that? What's your process?
Yeah.
Tuna
My
sandwiches.
process is very no, not no, my process is very privileged, is what it is.
Yeah.
Because I can afford to not take certain gigs, because I can
Hmm.
afford to block certain gatekeepers and just
Yep.
like throw up my middle finger and say I'm not working for you or
Yeah.
whatever. Because I can, I do.
Yep.
But I don't have friends that have that luxury. I have a lot of friends that don't have that they have to
Hmm.
be quiet about things because
Yeah.
they need to put food on their table and a
Yeah.
roof over their head.
I
And
feel that.
that, yeah. So it's like, it's a balance for people. I try not to judge. I remember there was this one artist I knew who had to do a rally,
Hmm.
a Trump rally. And I don't
Wow.
know where she stands politically
Yeah.
100%. And it doesn't really matter that people came for her. And I had to sit there with my discomfort and say, because she needed to do that
Hmm.
because she needed the money.
Yep.
And it's really easy for me to say, I don't care. I'd walk away no matter what. Well, guess what? I can walk away.
Yeah.
I can. I don't, my income isn't what puts a roof over our heads.
Yeah.
My income pays for my music and things that I need for my business, and not always.
Yeah. Me
Sometimes it
too.
doesn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's like, it's really, let's stop judging other people on that.
Yes.
But as far as whether or not you can sleep at night, to me it's like, it's a you have to know what your goals are and what you're willing to sacrifice for those goals. And so some people have solid goals. They want that Grammy on their shelf, they want to tour with the big guys,
Yep.
they have that dream. When you're zeroed in on it, you just have to make hard choices.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's always been, um, I don't want those things necessarily. I mean, I can fantasize about them. And sometimes I kind of, oh, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But the clearer I've gotten on what really makes me happy, and maybe it's because I'm older,
Hmm.
now, that those things are less important to me. It's more about, like what you said, wanting to sleep well at night, wanting
Yeah.
to, because every time I chased, I have this story in my book about the red herring. Did you ever watch the movie Clue?
Yes. Yes, I did. Yeah.
And I would have this voice in my head. It would be Tim Curry saying that was just a red herring, because every time I start chasing something that makes me kind of sick inside, that's the red herring. That's what's taking me off course. I've
Right.
lost the plot. I've,
Yeah.
like, get back on, the
Yeah.
thing. And to me, my red herring is chasing the next, uh, you know, big thing,
Yeah.
because I'm still not comfortable with a big, presence or anything. I think I do far better in intimate connections,
Yes.
like that sort of thing. So it's a weird place to be as a performing singer-songwriter, but it's not a weird place to be as a songwriter.
Right.
Just if you're trying, if my goal was to be this big touring songwriter who filled out, concert halls, on some level, then yeah, that wouldn't work. But
Yeah.
that's not my goal. That's not what feeds my soul. That actually, every single time I've had a really big show comparatively to what I normally do,
Hmm.
I'm drained for, like, it's like, okay, I need time. I need alone time now.
Yeah. 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 I'm like that too.
Social battery
Yeah,
empty,
yeah, mine is like
yeah.
that too. And I think you're right. I think it's more of a balance, I think we all have to have hard choices that we make, and we all
Yeah.
make them for different reasons, but we have to find the balance of like when I say sleep, I'm sort of using general terms, but what I'm really talking about is like being at most peace with yourself as possible
Yeah.
when you're
Know
creating art.
thyself.
Yeah, and when you're
Yeah.
creating art and doing stuff, and knowing where you're being maybe a little hypocritical here and there, but just
Mhm.
clocking that and saying, okay, that's one, but I'm going to do five more things that fill my cup.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got 10 minutes left. So I wanna pick your brain really quick about social media. I want to
Mm.
know what your approach and relationship with social media is. I want you to tell me if it's good or bad for us as performing
Ah.
songwriters,
It's
and just
excellent for us as performing songwriters. You
okay.
can just be here at your house in your pajamas and reach all these people across the world.
Yeah.
And it's also like the worst thing ever invented. It's
Well,
everything all
well,
the time.
let's talk about your relationship with it. What is your relationship with social media?
My relationship is that I ghost it every once in a while. And then I'm also addicted to it at other times.
Yeah.
And then,
I love your honesty. It's so good.
yeah, I'll oh, you know who that guy Gary V. He
Oh
just
God.
like I know, but he said something amazing the other day
Okay,
because he
okay.
showed up in my feed, and it was just like a young songwriter was asking him like, I'm struggling with how I do this in social
Uh-huh.
media. He's just like, if you're not inspired, then don't post. If like 1% of your audience will leave because you're not engaging them, but like what at what expense? And like I already knew this. I've been
Yeah.
told this before, but I took Gary Vee to say it again for me to go, oh yeah, that's right. Like if
Yeah.
this back on track, it's a red herring.
Yeah.
I don't want to chase that.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, every once in a while, I might be inspired and I show up and I'm like, oh, I'm going to write this,
Yeah.
or I'm going to, every time I swear off of social media, I want to, and
Yeah.
every time I'm on social media, then I want to be off of it. It's like,
Right.
just wait till you're inspired, do that. I know that there are definitely strategies
Yeah.
that work for
Right.
people and songwriters, but honestly, I cannot stay connected to that. Once it becomes a strategy and I'm
It's
like,
too
okay, I've
much.
got my
Yep.
plan and
Yep.
I'm going to get
I
started.
got
I'm
my
like,
3 months
okay,
of content all set up,
yes. And
Yeah.
then I go, I don't want it
Yeah.
anymore. I hate
Yeah.
it. I'm
Yeah.
going to go
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like that too. I mean, I'm sure there's, the thing about it is like you can take two approaches. I think you can take the sales marketing approach, which is
Mhm.
proven and true, but also what do you end up with a lot of those? You end up with a lot of bots. You end up with a lot of like fans that are not really fans. They're just more fans of the content you make where you're dancing or sharing recipes or whatever. And then
Yeah.
you have the other slant, which I was talking to Chris Taylor, who's also San Antonio artist,
Mhm.
Chris Taylor, and
Yep.
he's an artist as well, visual painter. And he mentioned something that I think really resonates with me. It's just like treating your social media as like the tool for your art, and that's it. So I've been really approaching my social media now as like an art gallery where I'm like, oh, everything's in red now because the new record is called Wild Blood. Everything is black and
Yeah.
white because I'm talking about gray area people and things like
Yeah.
that. So it just makes it more fun and more honest, which
Yeah.
is I think
Make it you, make it your another just tool in your self-expression, whatever. I mean, I think that's great, a great way to look at it, because the minute, we become slaves to it, or we become, that's a horrible term to use. At the minute we just become, compelled by it,
mhm,
then it's no longer our show, right? We're
yeah,
just doing, we're fitting the algorithm. And there's, I don't want to really judge anybody for using those tools if their goal is to increase, exponentially their following, and they're trying, like Cat Stevens, trying shit and trying shit.
yeah.
Cat Stevens, is that his last name?
uh
Cat,
Cat Stevens. Yeah, I think it
last
is.
name?
I think that's a song, right?
Oh, I just blanked. Yeah, the comedian Cat
Oh, Cat Williams.
Cat Williams. Where is it
I thought
Stevens from? What the
yeah, I was
hell?
like, I don't remember that song.
Cat Williams. No,
Yeah,
Cat Williams.
yeah, love
My
Cat
friend Margaret and
Williams.
I, yes,
Yeah,
we're always going trying shit and trying
trying
shit.
shit. Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah. I'm not gonna fault anybody for trying all the different ways to
yeah,
do it. I've tried a number of different ways because I thought, well, I'm going to do my due diligence and I'm going to do everything I can to run, to do the responsible thing and put my music out there and try to make it, make it. That's great, but it's just, yeah,
yeah. I totally hear you, and I totally agree with you. I think
much.
I was going to ask you the last question that I ask everybody else, which is if you can give me or other small time songwriters one piece of advice about the business or the craft, what would it be? But I have a suspicion it's going to be honesty, because I think that's
Oh my
the theme
gosh,
of
you
today.
did psychic.
I think that's the theme of today is honesty.
Yeah,
So, what is your advice?
be honest, like
Yeah,
seriously. but
yeah,
but it's not just being honest with, it's being honest with yourself, really. It's just relentlessly honest with yourself, and relentlessly, because I find that that's been my main thing in writing songs, is that's the question I constantly ask: is that true? Is that true? Is what I wrote, just what I just wrote, is that true? Is it true just for me, or is it true on a larger scale? I don't know. Sometimes it just has to be true to me. But to me, that's my guiding kind of light. And it's been that way for a long time. Like it's what, if, as long as I follow that and it speaks to my truth, I feel like I can sleep at night.
Awesome. Awesome.
Aha.
Well, thank you for doing
That's
this.
what I did there.
Yeah,
I
that's
came
called a
right back
callback.
around.
That's a callback. Yeah. All right, buddy. Well, thank you so much for doing the interview. Where can people find you?
LauraMarieMusic.com or LauraMarie.com. Either of those on iTunes and Spotify and all the places.
Things. And on Instagram, she's Laura Marie Music, or
That's
Laura
true.
Marie. Is it Laura Marie Words or In Words?
Laura Marie in Words and Laura Marie Music. And then I'm Laura Marie Music Official on Facebook because somebody stole my account and I had to make another one.
I still have not gotten my Facebook account back from Facebook. It's been 6 years. It's been like 6 years. I've been sending reports like, please give me back my account.
It's ridiculous.
Speaking of social media, it sucks.
It's free. Yeah. Well, you get what you pay for.
That's a good point. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome day with the kids and all that stuff. For those of you on the audio that can't see the cool poster behind you.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede. All right. See you later. You have a good one, buddy.